Hello and welcome to our webinar on user attestations in GRC. I am Riina Silverberg and I'll be your host for this session. With me, I have Nikit Lodi, the Senior Product Manager for GRC. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few tips about our webinar platform. The screen has several windows or widgets. You can move them around, resize them, or toggle them on and off. You can expand the window to full screen by clicking the arrows on the top right-hand corner. Some networks may cause you to experience an occasional lag in the presentation. In that case, press F5 and that will refresh your page and usually get rid of the problem. If that does not help, you can ask a question in the Q&A chat window. We'll get back to you with a potential solution. We have an upcoming webinar, What's New in October release for Infor.OS platform. This is a hugely popular session we've had now for a few times, and it's on October 21st at 11 a.m. EDT. We will post a notification about this about 2 weeks before the actual session. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover in the future, you can leave those recommendations or suggestions also in the Q&A chat window. Quick shout out to our developer portal that's now on a new platform. The main reason for mentioning the community and the platform is we will be posting the Q&A questions and answers into the GRC community. You can read the community information, the best practices, tutorials on the developer portal without an account, but to be able to interact with the community, ask questions, answer questions, ask additional questions, you need an account. It's free and easy to create, so warm recommendation for that one. InfoTechX is approaching fast, the end of October in Orlando. It's our premier event for developers, system admins, and platform experts. It's a 2 days immersive tech experience with topic deep dives, leaderboard challenges, and more. I will post a link in the Q&A window for the event. And lastly, a few housekeeping items. The session will be recorded. It will be available through the registration link, and it will also be available on YouTube in a few days. You can ask questions from our experts or Nikit. The session is pre-recorded, but Nikit is here through the session to answer your questions. And as mentioned in the previous slide, we will be posting the Q&A into the GRC community. So you have all the questions and answers available there. And with that, it's your turn, Nikit.
Right. So thank you, Riina, for the introduction and a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So looking forward to that. So in today's presentation, we'll be looking at how we can use the certification manager, which is a standard feature available within InfoGRC, to monitor or review user access from external applications. So when I say external applications, I mean non-infra applications that the customers are using. So typically, as a broad term, there is a term which is available in the market, which is called identity and access governance. And this is an umbrella term that is used by the information security experts. And there are a whole lot of features that are available in InfoGRC for this particular term, or like for this particular regulation. And also in terms of the compliance regulations, identity and access governance is important for ISO 27001, for Sarbanes-Oxley, for NIST-2 and PCI. And there are a lot more that I did list out here, but information security is primarily very important. And within that, there is a process which is about certifying the users for their existing access and make sure that they are appropriate and in conformance with the corporate policies. So that is what Certification Manager as a feature allows you to do. And we do have some videos available in YouTube that you can refer, which will provide you a deep overview of the existing functionality and how Certification Manager is integrated with the Infor Cloud Suite itself. So what Certification Manager does is, here we have explained it with an example. So let's say that there is an employee from the support team and he's transitioning to the development team. So we need to ensure that he's no longer retaining access to production systems that he would typically have access to as a support team member. And also all the security roles and everything that he had access in the previous team needs to go away, and then he needs to get the new security roles from the development team. So that is the typical access management process. But as a manager of the employee who is onboarding this member, the manager from the development team will do a periodic review and make sure that everything is revoked and he has only the relevant access. So that can be done with a feature called Certification Manager. So when we talk about Certification Manager and talking about any of the Infor applications, you can easily monitor that because the data is flowing in into the current integration and everything is available. But for third-party applications where the customers have some kind of footprint of maybe a small tool that they're using where the users need access to, or there could be a larger application that is integrated within the ecosystem. So you need to be able to bring that data into GRC, which can serve as a single platform of doing the certification reviews. And that is what we wanted to bring as a part of this session today. So this is an example screen of how Certification Manager reviews are done, and you can see the user ID is shown with the roles that they have access to and the supporting information that helps the reviewers decide whether the role is relevant or not, and then they can take action at the individual access level. And we'll be taking a deep dive into this as a part of the presentation anyways, but we'll be looking at it with third party or external application data. So there are two methods using which we can bring in the third party application data into Info GRC. So the first one is using a file connector, and the second one is using a data catalog in Data Fabric. So we'll go through we'll go through these approaches one by one, and then I'll explain you and demonstrate you how we can set it up and bring the data into GRC. Right. So we'll talk about the first approach where what we have done is we have defined a template of sorts, which is a JSON file, which essentially has attributes of the user and roles that you need to publish. So the basic attributes that every applications have, like the first name, last name, email, department manager, and then the security role, the ID, its description. So those are some of the basic fields that you always need. So we have defined a template so that you don't have to rediscover the wheel, and we can share this template with you, and that will help you build this template, and then you can get the data into that particular template format. It does not need to have a specific name, but just that we abide with the template format so that the data that is required is available for us to consume. So that's the first step, where you create the file, and then that particular file, which is basically containing the data, we need to register that schema into Ion so that when we read the file, we know what kind of information is expected from the file. So that's the first step, where you create the object schema, then you create a connection point, and then you create a data flow so that the file connector can pick up the file from a particular location and push it to Data Fabric, and from there on, it will be streamed into GRC. So again, I'll show you how this is done. And for that, let me now switch over to one of my applications and I'll show it to you. So before I jump into the application itself, I wanted to share the template that I was talking about. So this is the JSON file template that we have created. And as you can see, there are some terms like the email and first name, last name, user ID. So these are some typical fields that are required from a user perspective. And then, as you can see, for the security roles, there are basic fields like the role ID, name, description, and then we have a term called local ID, which is important for establishing and GRC, and we'll take a deeper look at what this means and how this is mapped into GRC at a later point. But these are some of the attributes that you need to fill out, and that's what we need to use as a part of GRC.
Nikit, how can the customers generate this input JSON file?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Reena, and that's a very good one. So typically, we are looking at a process where we want to automate everything. Like we want to be able to easily create this input file, and we don't want any manual intervention or any kind of burden on the user to create such a file. So what we recommend is there is a script that we can provide you from the services team, and all you need to do is create a flag file with all of these attributes. So you can create a flag file with the basic attributes of the user and the basic attributes of the role, and you put it in a particular location. We will run a script, and that script will automatically create the JSON file. So that's an easy way to automate and generate this file.
Okay, that sounds very, very handy. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Right. So now we have looked at the input file, and we see there are some example users that I have added in your, like the user George, and then there is another second user Mary, and then there are different kind of roles. I've put in some placeholder roles, like here we have some AWS account related roles. I have some CSP roles. And in the second user, I've put in some standard billing administrator kind of role. So it can be any external application with any kind of use, and all of those security roles can easily be mapped into this particular file. And the next step would be to, let's go into the tenant, and here the first step would be to go into data catalog and create the authorization object, which I have already done. And basically it is nothing but just mapping the attributes that I just showed into data catalog so that we can accept the file. And then the next step would be to define a data flow. So I have created this data flow, which is auth object data flow. And let me show you what it includes. So the first thing that you see is the file connector. And what I've done is I've used an internal server to configure this file connector, and it is picking up the file as an input from a shared location. And I have configured this as the document which I have registered in the data catalog. And this is the logical ID that I have referred for this file, so that when we want to get this data into GRC, this will be the logical ID or the location of the application that we'll be looking at to get the data into GRC. And this is the specific shared location that I have created where I will be placing the input file, and then it will get picked up, and then from there on it will be pushed into data fabric, and then that's how it will be consumed in GRC. So let me also show you what I have done in GRC. So this is the first step, which is involving Ion, where you have the file connector picking up the file and pushing it to data fabric. Then the next step would be to navigate in GRC, and you go into manage, and then monitored application and application instance. And in this, I have created an application instance with the same name so that it's not very confusing. So I've created this application instance with the name auth object. So that's the template file that I was referring to. And you can see the application type is a file, and then you're providing the logical ID here. So it could be any file. The name of the file is not very important, but the logical ID is the mapping point. So in the application instance, you put in the same logical ID, and that's how you create your application instance. And then there could be multiple applications that you are pointing to. So the next step would be to group these applications together in a data source. And that is what I have also done here. And again, I have created this same name data source, which will basically be used for getting the data into GRC. So this would be the data source for info. So again, one thing that I forgot to mention is that we are not creating a new insight, or we are not defining any new schema per se for this external application. What we are doing is we are trying to map it with an existing schema of info applications, and we're just trying to get the data. So you will see info footprint, but you will see the name of the application as a part of the application instance. So if, for instance, like if it is Workday, you can create it as Workday as the application, and you'll see that in application instance name, and it will be mapped to the existing schema, and that's how the data will come in. And then we need to make sure that I have enabled both of these features, which is authorization insight for info and certification manager for info, while I'm creating the data source. So that is done now. And now let me go and show you how I will verify the data. So I would need to navigate to monitor and data, and this is the page that will show me the information. So at this point, there is no information about George and Mary in the list of users. So let me perform the steps where I will basically place this file, which is my input file, which is the auth object JSON, in the shared location. All right, so let's give it a minute to copy the file over to the server where I've configured the input. All right, so it took a bit of a time, but it's done. All right, and then it will be picked up for processing, and you'll see that the file will just disappear from this location because it will be picked up and processed and pushed into Data Fabric. So again, let's give it a minute. All right, so as you can see, the file has been picked up and has been processed. And let me try to see if it is already showing up. All right, yep. So we can see that the two users that we had in the input file are now extracted into GRC, and the first user was George, and I had assigned a few security roles to this user. So the CSP for AWS account, that was the role that was assigned to George, and I had assigned a set of random rows to Mary. So let's look at that as well. So you can see the billing administrator role, the AWS role. So different group of rows assigned to Mary with the description that was present in the file. So that's how this data is now pushed and made available in GRC, and that's what we'll be using for creating the reviews. So before I run the certification process and create a review, now let me switch back to the slide deck and talk about the second approach, where I'm pushing the data into data catalog and then pushing into data fabric, and from there I'll be extracting it. So let's take a look at the second approach now. All right. And then I have also documented the steps that I perform. So when you will have access to this presentation later point, so you can go through the steps in detail and see what I did. So this is the second approach where we are using the data catalog and data fabric to get the information, and then that information can then be manually extracted into GRC. So this will be something that will require some additional steps, but this is a more flexible approach. If once you see this, you'll be able to relate to that. So in this case, the first step is defining the objects that are going to be available in data catalog. So again, we can just take any user and role file. So in this case, typically we recommend that you have like some files containing the user information, some file containing the role information. And if you want to go beyond a role, and if you also want to look at permissions within the role, there is also a possibility to upload that data. For the sake of the demonstration, I'll be primarily focusing on the user and role data, but there is also a possibility of permissions. So then this data can be basically pushed into Data Fabric, and from there we can create a view.
Hey, Nikit, I have a question. In this approach, is there a specific format or template required for making the data available in Data Fabric?
All right. Yeah. Again, a great question from you, Reena. So in this case, because of the fact that we wanted to provide a lot of flexibility to the customers using this approach, we have not basically defined any format or any specific template for getting the data into data catalog. It can be any format. What we are looking for is just to be able to help map out the fields from multiple objects and then create the views. So yeah, it's a more flexible approach, and you don't need a specific format.
So it's just as sorry. So as long as we have the information that you need, then the format is up to the user.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's right.
great. Thank you.
Right. So then you have the object files that are created in data catalog, and then you will be able to see them and browse them using the data fabric compass. Then what we are doing is we are creating the data fabric views on top of this data, and these views are the ones that are mapped to the destination schema in GRC, and that is how we are able to get any data into GRC. And then the next step would involve again creating the application instance and data source, similar to what we did in the first approach, so that we can point to the views. There will be a bit of a difference in the application instance. In this case, it will not be mapped by the logical ID, but by the views. And when I'll demonstrate that, it will become pretty clear how that is mapped. And then the next step is just making sure that you upload the data in data catalog on a regular basis, and then from there on, GRC will keep on extracting the data and getting it into GRC. Again, I have also documented the steps that I'm going to perform. So this will be handy at a later point when you are going through this presentation. So with that, let me switch and show you the input files first. So we have this input file. Again, it is a very raw input file that I'm taking up here, so that I'm not trying to put any kind of template. This is a file which has a whole lot of null values. There are so many parameters that are included in this file, and you can see there is the basic information as well. So we do have the fields like username, we have the roles that are assigned to the user. So all of the basic information is all in there. And then there is also manager details. There is information around the first name, last name. There is also possibility to put in the zip code, but all of these are like random fields which have been decided by the customer or the end user. And this is not something that we are dictating in terms of a template. So that's how the input file looks like. So there is data for two users in this file. One is Jonah Hudson, and then there is another user, Kate Parker. And then those are the users with their manager information and the role information. So that's the first file. And then there is a separate file which contains the roles. Let me open this up as well. All right, so there is a separate file that we have created which contains the roles, and we can see the role information that's out there, and then with the basic description about the role and the details around that. So this is what we can define here as a part of the role data master file, and then again you can elaborate this more, or you can have a third file containing the permissions as well, which we can consume. So these are the input files that I will be using as a part of this demonstration. So now let me switch over to GRC and let me take you to Data Fabric, and let's go and look at these objects there. So let me open up Compass, and what I've done is we have created these objects and we have registered them in Data Catalog and Data Fabric. So I'll abbreviate them with CM. So that's the reason you can see only the specific objects that I want to show you. So this is the raw object that was uploaded into Compass, which is the user and the role data. And let me run a query and show you what it contains. So this is the CM user table, and you can see that I registered all of these fields as is based on the input file that was provided. So okay, let me try this once again. All right, so that's the output of the user file. I've just consumed it as is, and that is the reason you see a lot of blank values, but there is important data around the user, so you can see all of this information, and you can also see the details of like the first name, last name, email, all of those information pieces are present. And similarly, we have the information for role. So now the most important and the critical piece of this integration is creating these views. So these are the 7 views that would be typically created. That is with the condition that if you also want to include the permission data. But if it is only the user and role data, then you just need 3. So the first one would be the CM user view. You'll need a role view, and then you'll need the user and role assignment view, basically the mapping between the user and role. So those are the views that you need to create, and that's how you can extract the data. Now let me show you how this view is created. So let me first clear this query out, and let's open the script for this particular view. So what we are doing as a part of creating the view is we are trying to map it to the destination schema so that GRC can understand what is the field we should expect for user, the first name, last name, email, manager, all the basic attributes, and then how to consume the role information. If there is something that is not present, then we can just pass it on as blank so that these are like non-mandatory additional attributes that are expected but are not passed in the data. So you can just pass it on as blank. And this is the view that has been created of the CM user object that we saw in the object section. So that's how the user view is created. And similarly, the other views of the role and role assignment have also been created. So now if I want to run a query and show you the output of how the data is looking in after it has been neatly formatted and put in the view, so it looks a lot better. So let's give a minute for it to complete the execution of the query, and then you'll see that it looks a lot better now. So it has the basic fields all aligned appropriately with the username, all the logical ID information, the email ID, the GUID, the security roles that are mapped to the user. So all of that basic information and the role information is now included, and this is the information that we are planning to extract into GRC. So this is the building block. You registered the schema in the data catalog for the basic objects. There are multiple ways of getting data into data fabric. So right now we are manually uploading via the data catalog, but You could also stream it via different third-party applications. There are different connectors which allow you to bring the data into data fabric. So that is the reason we wanted to adopt an approach that as far as the data can be made available as an object in data fabric, you can simply create these views and then bring the data into GRC. So now let's look at the application instance and the data source steps for how this will be mapped into GRC. So I will again go back to manage monitor applications and application instance page. And now let me filter out the CM application instance that has been created here. Uh, right. So let's give it a minute to load. And then as you can see, we have created this application instance by pointing to the different views. So the views that we were just looking at in data fabric, so those are the exactly same ones that have been configured. So typically the user information for all of the Infor applications comes in through Infor Federation Services or IFS, and that is the reason there is a separate flag to also flag out that okay, the user information is not coming in from IFS, but we want to bypass it and extract it via the view. And then you have to enable this flag and then put in the name of the view from which the user data is coming in, and then the role and permission views also have been mapped here. And then again, from a user perspective, the user and role assignment information is the key, so that is also mapped here. So all the views that we saw on the data fabric page in the compass view are all in there, and that is how the application instance is created. And then I just put this application instance in a data source, and I created the data source as well. So uh, how the data can be uploaded into data fabric. So there is a widget that you can use which is called the Atlas upload widget, and you can easily add this in the workspaces and you can get access to it. So here I will be uploading the file that we need. So let me navigate and pull up the file, and I'm going to upload the user file, and then I need to map it to the object that I'm going to use. So this is going to be mapped to the user. Okay, it's the CM user. Yep. So that's the data catalog object or the schema that we have registered. So that the source and destination are mapping, and then you can just click on upload, and that's it. So you're able to easily upload any data into data catalog, and that's how the data will be made available. And then the next step would be to go into manage and schedules, and you would go into extraction, and then let's say we provide the name of the task, and we can provide a description. In the insight, I will select authorization insight. I will pick the data source, which is the CM data source, and then I'll pick the application instance that is mapped to it, and it will automatically select and map the objects. So these are the views that we configured as a part of the application instance. And then you can click on next, and this can be a recurring schedule that can be created. So if you create it as a recurring series, it will keep on running on a daily basis. And if whenever you upload the data, whenever the next task runs in GRC, it will automatically pick it up from data fabric and bring it to GRC. So in the interest of time, I have already performed this task and I have completed the extraction. So let me show you where the data is. So the examples that I showed you are already uploaded and extracted. So we had the user Jonah Hudson and Kate Parker as the input file in the CM data source. and that was the file that I uploaded, and that's the same information that we are seeing on the screen, and we can see the role ID and the role information that was included as a part of uh, the input file that we looked at. So now comes the important piece where we can now run a certification review process and review the access of these users. So for that, you need to navigate to design, then you go into certification process, and here you can define a new certification process. So again, while defining the certification process, you will have multiple options. So you can decide the frequency of the review. So in case of critical accesses, you can do a more frequent review, maybe on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. And for the general access that you need to do for the end users, you can do it once a year or annually, and that should be fine. So how that can be controlled is something I'll just demonstrate here. So let's say again, uh, we can give a name for the certification review process, and then we will select the insight, and we'll select the data source. So here, let me select the CM data source, and then we need to nominate a sign-off owner who will be signing off the entire process at the end of the review cycle. So I've nominated that person. And then this is the part where you can create different certification processes. So let's say that if you want certain users to be reviewed on a regular basis, then you can filter out by user, or you can specifically pick the users, or you can apply some kind of filters if there's a naming convention for the users. And similarly, you can do the same thing for the roles, and you can filter out a subset of admin users or super users who have special access, who need to be reviewed on a periodic basis. And then for the other users, you can just have a all user certification process set up, and it will be executed, and you can see the reviews. So again, you can do it as a schedule, and you can do it one off schedule, or you can do it as a recurring series. And then that's how basically you will see a summary, and then you can schedule this process. So again, in the interest of time, I have already executed the certification reviews, and when I navigate to monitor and reviews as a manager of the users, this is what I'll see. So I'll be able to see the reviews page, and there I will see all the users from my team. And this was the process that I executed, which was the external app access review process. And let me drill down into one of the users and show you how does that look like. So when you drill down on a particular user, it will show you the name of the process. It will show you the user information. If you click on the user information, you will see the other attributes of the user, like the first name, last name, manager information, and anything else that you'll upload. And then from a security role perspective, you can see the access these users have and what kind of uh, roles they have. And then when you select, you'll see different options, and you'll be able to see approve, reject, reassign, and so on and so forth.
Nikit, sorry to interrupt you here. Before you move on, I know there's some Gen AI stuff here. So can you tell us about Gen AI integrations in the product now or coming up? Thank you.
I'm glad, Reena, you brought up that question, because that gives me an opportunity to plug in what's coming up in October. So, yeah, to answer your question, we do have Gen AI integration. So, as we can see on the screen, I can select these security roles, and I can click on generate violation summary. And what this will do is it will take the information around the role, it will take the information around the violations and the application, and it will summarize what it understands based on this information, and using the risk description that is available as a part of the violation. And it will simplify all of this information for end user who would be non-technical, like the manager of the user. and try to simplify this whole process for that user. So that's the first part. And then talking about the October release, what we have done is we have used machine learning to look at the historical review data and the historical violation information. And using that, we are providing a recommendation score. So we are providing a recommendation where we can say medium approve or high approve. So this is basically a concatenation of what is the kind of risk that we are seeing and what is the action that we are recommending based on that particular model. So using the historical data, we are training the model, and that's how we are using both Gen AI and AI in GRC.
Okay. And can I assume that we'll see this stuff live in the October release webinar?
Definitely. Yep. Looking forward to demonstrate that and share the innovation from the GRC team.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. So yeah. So what the manager now need to do is they need to select a specific role, and then they can decide if they want to approve or reject. And that is how these actions will be performed. So let's say I want to approve the uh, IT support access, and I can select the second one and I can reject it. So the roles will be selected and they will be moved to the appropriate tabs, and that is how it will be easy to manage the backlog of what is pending. So in some cases when there are like 10, 20 roles assigned to the user, moving it to approved and rejected simplifies the UI as well. So that is something that we have done here. And then, yeah, that's how basically you can complete the review process for each of the team members within your team. And then it will go through a process where once all the managers have completed the review, then it will go to the sign off owner to look at the overall information and then sign off the review. And then that's how the information is available. All of these details are available in the form of reports that can be made available to the auditors. And again, there are dashboards and widget to track the progress of how the reviews are progressing. There is a page to reassign reviews if the need be. So all of that is kind of built in and will work for both Infor applications and the third-party applications that we uploaded the data for. Right. So yeah. So those were the two approaches that we had, and yep. So with that, Reena.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikit. That was an interesting session. I hope people got a lot out of that. Before we finish, just a final reminder of the TechX event in Orlando at the end of October. I will be there, so if you have any analytics topics you want to talk about, that's my specialty. And with that, again, thank you, Nikit, for the session, and thank you, audience, for the interesting questions you sent in. We will post all of them in the GRC community. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.